Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great day finally, and back to full-time job, back to work, and now it is actually PT season, right? The time of year where we all in the military and the Army have to do this great and wonderful PT test. There's so many people that are just naturals at it, and they just knock it out, and they just kick tail, with PT tests without even trying. There's those that actually work at it and do a great job by working at it, and they actually, they may score 300. They may get on the extended scale, as it may exist or not exist anymore. So, but those of us that struggle, that is something that I used to do. I used to be a struggler with a PT test. I was 225 pounds. I was sitting in an extra large uniform, barely getting to the PT test, or barely getting the minimum on the PT test, and just worried and struggled, and just always had a concern as if I was going to actually pass it or not. And then getting up to the PT test and getting down, doing the push-ups and sit-ups and the run, and doing the 3-event test, we would get done and we'd go get weighed in, right? So we'd finish up our weigh-in, and I would wonder if I was going to pass the tape because I was just so overweight. There were things that I had to learn in order to get past that, because I've dropped over 50 pounds. I'm now maintaining on average around 80-85% on my PT test now. And it's all because I made a change. I made a decision. I took the opportunity to make a decision and change my path and course of action, understanding that what I was doing was going to affect my career, and I could not sustain where I was. I had to do something. I knew that I wanted to be in the military. I knew I wanted to, make it a career. So I had to create things in my path in order to obtain the goals that I had in my career path and achieve those things. So some of the things that I learned through this process and getting better at my PT test, I came up with 3 things that I suggest that every soldier should know when prepping or before they take the PT test. And today I'm going to talk about the first one. The first one today is called, or centers around, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. The very first thing that you got to think of is that you cannot sprint into a PT test. Some people can, but majority of soldiers cannot in the military, right? You can't just wait until the last minute to get prepared for the PT test. So many people come in the last minute and they're struggling, and they're like, oh, they're just down themselves, and they're just worried sick that they're going to pass. They sprint into it. They start injuring themselves sprinting into it. So then that next thing you know, they can't take the test. So that puts them off another 6 months to a year, or whatever the recovery time may be. And they end up failing the test because they didn't properly prepare themselves mentally, physically for this test. They may go in 1 or 2 nights or 1 or 2 weeks prior to the test and think that they're really prepping for this test, but knowing that they can do better in the end. And there's too many people that cannot sustain that approach. Too many people cannot sustain the approach of just sprinting into the test. That's the way I was. I was trying to sprint into the test every time I turned around. But because of my habits and change in habits and what I put myself, or the structure that I put myself into, I don't sprint into it anymore. I created a marathon approach to where I'm continually building on myself and continually maintaining myself in order to be ready at any time. So that way, when I walk into my unit, they're like, hey, we're taking a PT test today. It's like, hey, great, let's go do it. Instead of me going, oh no. It's kind of like the urinalysis, right? Everybody's like, oh no. Oh, sorry, I had a phone call. And too many people get disappointed by not being able to pass their PT test, but yet they put it on themselves. They've created their own anxiety for this test because they did not prepare themselves. So create a marathon type approach. Don't sprint into it. I can tell you that I've been there many times over and over, and that you've got to create a daily work ethic in order to get yourself prepared, right? And that's with anything. Look at marathon runners. I mean, let's compare this to marathon runners. They don't just jump out and run 26.2 miles, right? They build themselves up over weeks at a time in order to prepare their body, mentally and physically as well, in order to get out there and run their marathons. They don't just jump out and do it. So this is one thing that I urge you to do. This is the first thing that I want you to understand and that I suggest that you understand in preparing for the PT test is create a marathon type approach, not a sprint. Continually work on yourself to improve yourself daily. Whatever the fitness type program it is that you're doing in order to prepare yourself, whether it's APRT, which it can be a good program if it's followed properly and correctly. And your unit may be conducting APRT, but as long as they're not doing the prep drills and the conditioning drills, and going beyond that and building on the physical fitness and physical abilities that it can provide you, you've got to implement that outside of your unit as well on your own time. You can't just go in for 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour with your unit PT and expect, hey, this is going to do it for me, right? There's other factors that you've got to put into place. So that's where that marathon approach comes in. Create a marathon approach to where you're putting in daily work in order to achieve the goal that you want to achieve. So you're not running and sprinting into the PT test and worried if you're going to fail and setting yourself up for failure. It's not about failure. Set yourself up for success. Now, I've got 2 more parts to this, and tomorrow I'll hit up the second video, and I'm going to talk about the ups and downs of this. And today we talked about the sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the ups and downs. So I hope you got value out of this. If you did, share it with somebody. Let them know, hey, this is something that you need to listen to, and say, hey, let's create a marathon approach to the PT test together. Let's create accountability somewhere to where we can be marathoners going into the PT season. I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.